Hello guys, Joe from Makgeolli, and in this video we're going to be talking a lot about Nuruk. So here we go. Now, if you don't know what Nuruk is, this video will kind of give you a clear explanation into what Nuruk is, what is it made of, what to expect, and the differences between using commercial Nuruk and more traditional Nuruk at the same time. So, what is Nuruk? Nuruk is the fermentation starter when it comes to making makgeolli. Like I always say, it's the heart and soul of Korean alcohol. And predominantly, it's made out of wheat. Now, long story short, how it's made. So we have wheat that we crush it. What we do is we use a Nuruk making frame such as this, and we put a thin cloth in here. We add obviously our Nuruk mixture, and then we pack it, we step on this, and we let this ferment for about a month. Now, that is the pretty straightforward way of making Nuruk. However, Nuruk can actually be made in many different ways. We can also incorporate different little grains, including mung beans too. But depending on the makgeolli recipe that you're making, or the seasons that you're making it, or the regions that you're making it, depending on the moisture, the humidity, and the heat. Now, all these factors will greatly affect the outcome of how your Nuruk will end up being, if anything, right? So now, why is Nuruk so important for makgeolli? Well, the reason is Nuruk has both molds and yeasts, okay? If you ever wonder why we would need molds, it's because the molds that the Nuruk has is they would be in charge of breaking the starch from the rice, and of course the yeasts would eat the sugars from the starch, and then we will create alcohol. But here's the catch. The cool thing about Nuruk is that because it has both molds and yeasts, it goes through something called parallel fermentation, or in Korean it's called 병행복발효. Now, what that ideally means is that when eventually you make makgeolli and you mix all your ingredients and then you put them in a vessel or a jar, then fermentation is going to kick in, and there's, I would say, very little maintenance that you have to do. And after a set amount of days or time, depending on how you're making your makgeolli, then you'll have your final product, which is great. That's why I always say when it comes to making makgeolli, it feels that it's way more inviting in terms of like, it feels like you're cooking. I've been homebrewing in very small places for many years. And it's been a very rewarding experience without having to break the bank. Now, what is the biggest difference between commercial makgeolli and traditional makgeolli? Well, for the most part, when it comes to more traditional makgeolli, we tend to use just wild yeast or Nuruk, okay? But when it comes to more commercial makgeolli, then they don't use traditional Nuruk, but instead they will use enzymes that are modified, that are very strong in order to break down the starch from the rice. And mostly you'll find that in commercial makgeolli. At the same time, the benefits for using commercial Nuruk, it's that you're able to maintain a more stable quality control. And of course, if you're trying to scale your makgeolli and make huge amounts of batches, like obviously bigger commercial breweries would do, then of course, just using wild yeast or Nuruk is going to be a nightmare. It's going to cost more money. And of course, it's just going to be a bigger problem, okay? When it comes to more traditional makgeolli, especially breweries, the biggest challenge that myself included we have is that the flavor, maintaining that consistency of flavor in every batch, it becomes a slightly more challenge, right? Okay, the rewards of actually using more traditional Nuruk is that what you'll notice is there's going to be a much rounder flavor, much more depth, much more complexity that happens inside your makgeolli. So you're gonna get different combinations of sweetness, savoriness, a little bit of tanginess or tartness. And in general, it just flavors are more round. But when it comes to, when you start drinking a lot of makgeolli that uses these different types of enzymes, then for the most part, the sweetness tends to be a little bit the sweetness seems to be a little bit less appealing. And for the most part, you don't get a lot of that. In Korean, we call it 풍미 or quality when it comes to your Korean alcohol, right? The biggest question again here is, where do you actually buy Nuruk? As a matter of fact, even in Korea, if you go to just your regular supermarkets, you're not going to find it. So if you're in Korea, the easiest place to get it is from Coupang. Now, what is Coupang? Coupang is like our Amazon here in Korea, so it's very easy to get it. If that's not an option, or the second option is actually to call the distributors. Here in Korea, for the most part, we have four different types of nuruks that are pretty good. They're a little bit different in their own way, but for the most part, we use 소율곡, we use 금정산선, we use 진주곡자, and we use 한용석 nuruk. And those four are pretty much the ones that a lot of people use. I've used all of them. There's slightly different varieties. Maybe I'll include that in a different video. We'll do a slight test. But when it comes to traditional nuruk that is mainly sold in Korea, then I would say a good 90% of people actually use all those four nuruks if they're actually not making their own. For the most part, in places like in the US, perhaps Canada, not sure, but they'll have Korean supermarkets called H-Marts, and in there you'll start finding a little bit more nuruk here and there. I've seen it sometimes whenever I go to the States, or at the same time, you'll find some nuruk on Amazon. However, the nuruk that's been sold on Amazon, it always tends to be sold out for some reason. So it might be a little bit hard to get it. Now, if you venture to learn how to make nuruk, so again, we got many here. You can, if you are in the Seoul area visiting Korea, then you can take a class with us, Makgeolli and Makgeolli, and we can learn how to make nuruk with us, and at the same time enjoy some of the makgeolli from our brewery. And if you're not coming to Korea, you can join our online course, which it teaches you not just one type of makgeolli, but many types of Korean traditional makgeolli making methods. And you can also pick up our book called Home Brewing Korean Rice Wine, which again, you can learn how to make your nuruk and all of these makgeolli recipes. By the way, the book finally is going to come out as a printed version sometime next year. I'm still finishing and working on some chapters. There's going to be more fun stuff about nuruk. So if you've already picked up the ebook and you've read it, thank you so much for supporting Makgeolli and Makgeolli, and thank you so much for supporting this very unique craft, which is Korean rice wine, makgeolli, and 전통주. Okay? Well, thanks again, guys, and peace out.